Benji Eisen from Filter Magazine and the Bonaroo Beacon and Cold Turkey. This question is for all of you one by one. Bonaroo is seen as a jam band festival. Whether or not that's accurate is another question. But when did each of you become aware of the jam band scene and the word and the term jam band?
I came first in contact, when I was like 14 or 15 years old, and I found my parents' Grateful Dead records and started listening to them. And they didn't really match the music with the cover. Like I saw the skeletons and the roses, I thought it would be really cool, and then I put the music on. I wasn't that into it, but then when I got a little bit older, I started to get into it and, went to my first Grateful Dead concert at MSG. And then when I was 17, took off and went on the road with Fish, following them in a Volkswagen bus. So that was my first connection to the jam band.
The term jam band, I just heard just a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. The term, I don't remember exactly when I heard it expressed that way. But as far as jam bands are concerned, that's what I've been doing all my life. Ever since I was 14 and started playing jazz, that's what we do. It's kind of built into the territory. I'll tell you one thing that Trey Anastasia called me. We went to Connecticut to record a track. He's doing a track for my new record, John's 1-2. Trey told me that the idea of jam band for him came about when he first heard a record called Jack Johnson that Miles Davis did back then. I had the good fortune of being on that record too. I played organ for the first and only time on that record, but he said to him that was jam band.
The interesting thing, though, if I can add about jam bands, I don't know anybody. I know a lot of people use the term, but I don't know anyone who's ever self-proclaimed a jam band. And this might be controversial, but to me, I don't know if anyone agrees. Jamming implies low expectation for high output. Like, let's find a couple chords and let's just get as much playing as, because you get out what you put in. And I've learned that in the last week. Playing with Herbie. I mean, there's a lot of X's to stand on. It's not jamming. I mean, it's performing. And there's a lot of it's like stage blocking in a play, And jamming to me has always carried a slightly lazy connotation in terms of, well, let's not think. Let's just play as much as possible, And it's interesting how whenever someone says you want to come over and jam, I always say no. If someone says you want to come over and write some stuff, form a structure, and that's the thing too. Is like. I asked Herbie last night in between the encore, I said, how much of those old records you just improvised? He said, well, not really, not a lot of it. I mean, there are forms that come in. And I think jam sometimes is, let's get as much out with putting as little in as possible. And I've always gravitated to people who put as much in as possible, because those are the moments that you think are scripted, but they're not,
So in that regard, by the way, sometimes when you work with really gifted musicians that you've had a chance to work with for a while, and you kind of know each other, you can even stretch beyond the written structure and create new structures as you go along. But it's still the concept of structure. But in this case, it's more an improvised structure, and you decide moment to moment with the empathy that you have for each other, which direction it's going to take. But it's still structured, but it's not like just anything you want at any time. But this is very high level stuff, and it ain't easy to do.
Look, Herbie, we're having a dialogue.
You guys are jamming.